Hey everyone, so I wanted to talk about two topics today, one being the new CSO Matthew Ball, and of course the situation with Project Helix, and of course Valve Steam Machine. Now if you've not been living under a rock, you'll know that Valve Steam Machine is just around the corner. We've already got the confirmed specs, and the hardware is coming. We don't know the actual price, but it's estimated somewhere between $500 and $700. And it starts off at what I expect should be the maximum for that hardware, and goes way beyond what it really should be doing. But the problem is, it's going to land before the likes of Project Helix. So they are directly competing with Project Helix for that space in your living room as a PC console hybrid. Now, obviously, the Steam Machine is going to run on Linux and it's running on Steam OS, whereas the Project Helix is running on a version of Windows 11. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's the desktop Windows 11 that we're used to, right? Because the Series X runs on Windows 10. It could be a curated system. And why do we know this? Because Tim Sweeney, Epic CEO, turned around and made a tweet some time ago saying that, hey, we kind of need to have a discussion with Xbox because we want to be there day one. And then Tim Sweeney tweeted again saying, discussions went well, all is confirmed, Epic Game Store will be on Project Helix day one. Which means it's not going to be a full open Windows system, because if it was, he wouldn't have to go to those lengths in order to confirm that it's going to be there. He wouldn't have to have those discussions. And him making that public raises eyebrows, because at the end of the day, if it was a full-on open Windows platform like we have today on our PCs, it wouldn't matter whether he had that discussion or not. Everything is fair game. It's running on Windows. But him making that discussion is a bit weird. Of course, this brings me onto the topic of exclusives, because we know that Matthew Ball doesn't like Game Pass. In fact, he absolutely hates it. He's completely against Game Pass in the fact that he doesn't believe a subscription service is the best model for these games, because as I'm seeing the bigger content creators now, and I'm not going to name names, they now believe that Game Pass completely and utterly cannibalizes, and they admit that they were wrong when they said Game Pass doesn't cannibalize. I mean, I've said this all along that Game Pass cannibalizes. I know it does, because it's stopped me buying games. I don't buy them anymore because I don't have to. It's on my subscription service. Like, why would I buy it? There's no need, especially if it's a one and done game. There's literally no need. I have to have like a collector's edition, where you get like the Indiana Jones Globe or something, or the Starfield watch and stuff, if I'm going to actually get the game retail. It's just a no-brainer for me. But Matthew Ball is not for Game Pass, so we know this. So we should be expecting Game Pass changes in the future, because he is going to make changes. Whether this means more games coming off the platform day one, or, making very, very big changes to Game Pass, is something that we'll see in the future. But this now brings me back to the whole, hey, Valve is trying to compete with Microsoft. Sony is competing with Microsoft. But Microsoft is giving their games to Valve, Microsoft is giving their games to PlayStation and getting nothing in return. So how do you compete when you're giving your games away freely, to everyone else, and you get nothing in return? Matthew Ball has been brought in to actually make those decisions and have those discussions to bring Xbox back, into the competitive field. You can't be competitive if you have nothing to really stand out by. If you're giving all your games away to Steam and it's cheaper to buy them on Steam than it is on your own store, well, you have a big problem there. There's nothing you're doing there that's enticing people to buy it. So where does that leave everything? Well, we know this Valve's Steam Machine is landing this year, and it's going to impact and, directly compete with Project Helix. It's not going to compete with it in specs. It's in fact weaker than the Series X and PS5, at least on paper. But the reality is it's coming first. It's landing first. and it's going to take at least a portion of those consumers away, and the Steam bros are going to be lapping that up like no tomorrow. But we also know that Valve is only going to be selling this on their platform. They're not going to be distributing it to other stores. Now, what if they decide they want to do that because they really want to compete this time? They want to be out there pushing the Steam machine as much as possible to gain as much ground as they can. No matter how you look at it, Steam's machine being there is a wrench in the works. PlayStation has removed their first-party single-player games, not because they weren't doing anything to the PlayStation platform, but because they saw Project Helix and the Steam machine as direct competitors. They saw that if they released the games on PC, their single-player games at some point will play on Xbox, and obviously, as we know, they work on Steam anyway. So it diminishes the reason to buy a PS5 and a PS6, which is their whole model. They live on that model. So they've now turned around and, well, presumably said that they're not supplying their first-party single-player story-based games to, PC, and it's done. Only multiplayer. But that's what competition does. And so if PlayStation is doing that, why do you think Valve wouldn't? At no point has Phil Spencer turned around and said Steam is going to be on Project Helix. Asher Sharma hasn't said it. Aaron Greenberg hasn't said it. Steinskin hasn't said it. Jason Ronald hasn't said it. None of them have said it. Now, they have said Epic Game Store is going to be on there. And I think that's a very important distinction right there. They have said that the Epic Game Store is going to be on there, but not once have they mentioned the word Steam. And to me, that raises an eyebrow, because if this is a closed system where you will not get access to Windows, and you'll only gain access to the Xbox front-end dashboard, and that will have select apps that they are authorized to allow you to use, despite the fact that in the background it is pretty much a PC. Maybe someone will reverse engineer it at some point, but looking at it from a standpoint right now, in face value, the average consumer is not going to do that. If Steam is not on the Project Helix, especially in this climate, in the way Xbox is going by giving all their games away, it will lose immense value. And all the power now is with Valve. Because Valve can turn around and say, I'm not giving you Steam. Now, Gabe has been quoted saying that he's happy to have, discussions with Xbox and have Game Pass on Steam. He is quoted saying this on, a TV show. But times change. And now they've got their Steam machine, which they know is going to sell. Maybe not sell in the tens of millions, but it is going to sell. And if it has the impact that they want, there's absolutely no reason why they will, in my opinion, turn around and say, hey, Microsoft, you can have Steam on your platform, when they are going to be directly competing with Microsoft in order to gain a footing in that market. Don't forget, one of the big things about Steam is the fact that they're not able to use anti-cheat. What if their footing in the market actually expanded because of the Steam machine? It would give other developers reason to start working on and getting around that anti-cheat system and allowing it to work on SteamOS. And at that point, SteamOS would be an even bigger competitor against Windows. And so Microsoft right now is turning around and saying, hey, PlayStation, you can have everything. Hey, Steam, you can have everything. And they're not giving anything back in return. And so if that's the case, my question to you guys, I guess, is with Project Helix, would you still have the same excitement for Project Helix with only the Epic Game Store and maybe GOG as you would have had if Steam was on there? It really does beg the question, doesn't it? Because for the longest time we've all assumed that Steam is going to be a platform on the new Project Helix. But going back and looking through videos and interviews, not once did Phil Spencer or Sarah Bond ever mention the word Steam. Epic Game Store has been mentioned a couple of times, and we know that especially through Tim Sweeney. But Phil and Sarah have been, quoted saying the Epic Game Store. But they have been very, very, forthcoming in not mentioning the word Steam. They've never actually mentioned that Steam would be a playable platform. At least I couldn't find anything saying that it would be a platform on the Project Helix. All they've been saying is they want to have more platforms on there. And if I was Valve, and I'm releasing my Steam machine, and I'm getting, 6 months to a year early footing, I would be focused on making sure I'm building that machine up and getting it out to as many people as possible, and making sure that my experience is only going to be tailored to either PC, a Linux PC, a Windows PC, a Linux PC, or to the Steam machine, not to the Project Helix. Do you see where I'm coming from? So hopefully Project Helix does allow you to go into the Windows operating system, but I don't believe it will. I believe it's going to be a traditional console that will have the majority of the PC stuff locked behind that you just won't get access to. And if that is the case, there is every bit of a chance that Steam is not going to be there. And so with that in mind, Matthew Ball may decide that putting the games on Steam is not the best way forward if they want to actually get Project Helix off the ground. Putting games on PlayStation might not be the best way forward if that's, if they want to get Project Helix off the ground. So if they want to sell their platform, they need to, bring gamers to their platform, which is the Xbox PC app, the Xbox console, and of course xCloud. And so that leads me back to my point with Matthew Ball and Game Pass, and changes could be coming. More day one games could be falling off, and the fact is exclusives could be returning as a way to bolster the machine's appeal to the consumer market. Now, Microsoft also needs to make sure that their games are hitting a certain level of quality, and in the past they just haven't. They've basically been hovering around the 8 out of 10 mark. But if you want a system seller, you need to hit those 9s, 9.5s, or even 10s. Like Forza Horizon 6, which in my opinion is a system seller. It's a racing game, and if you love racing games and that's only available on one platform, it could be the game that entices you to get it. But if Halo comes out and is a 9.5 out of 10, Gears E-Day, Gears 6 comes out and they're both like 9 out of 10, 9.5 out of 10, or even 10 out of 10. You've got Fable that comes out and it's 10 out of 10. These would instantly then become console sellers. Now, I don't think Fable's going to be anywhere near that, but you get the point I'm trying to make here. And Matthew Ball, who already doesn't like Game Pass, with everything that's happening with Valve and PlayStation, I think we're about to see some major changes, both to the way the Xbox is actually being run, the way the Xbox console is going to be delivered, and, the way our services that we have come to enjoy are maintained. All eyes are going to be on June the 7th, because I believe that is going to be the main first step of this journey. But I think that is going to dictate how the attitude of Xbox goes going forward. It's an interesting thought. But again, would you be as interested in Project Helix if Steam was not a viable option on there? That's the real question. How much value would the Project Helix lose, considering many games skip the Xbox PC app, just like they do with Xbox? With only Epic Game Store on there and maybe GOG, how much value in your eyes, or enthusiasm or hype, would it lose if the Steam platform wasn't on there? And I think that's the real question. Because as of right now, there is nothing out there guaranteeing that you are going to have access to that full Windows platform on Project Helix. Everything is indicating that you are not. Everything in their terminology is indicating that you are not. And because of that, that's why this video exists. And we'll discuss more of it on Tuesday, I guess, but I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comment section below. If you've enjoyed this discussion and enjoyed this brainstorming process, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comment section below, but do consider leaving a like, subscribe, hitting that bell to stay up to date with all content I release. I really appreciate every one of you, and we are trying to get to 10,000 subs, so your support would be most graciously appreciated. We are also streaming at Chaos Lounge Gaming and over at Twitch at Chaos Lounge _. All those links in the description below. those are mainly just gaming streams, so I'd really love to kick that off as well. So having a bunch of you over there so we can, you know, have some discussions and fun playing video games, that would be amazing too. Alright folks, that's it. That's all I have to say for this. I appreciate your time watching this. Until the next one, remain legend.